Hey, what's up? So, there's actually a Pokemon TCG Pocket Tournament Discord, and that Discord had a 64-person tournament over the weekend. And a few bigger creators than me have already covered this, but I just wanted to give my 2 cents as well, because the Discord did publish the top 8 deck lists, and some of them are pretty interesting. But first, we can actually check out the deck distribution because that's pretty interesting as well. We can see that Pikachu EX is the most represented deck, followed by a tie between Mewtwo Gardevoir and Starmie Articuno variants. And it was already pretty clear that these three archetypes, Pikachu EX, Mewtwo EX, and Starmie Articuno variants, were all probably the top 3 strongest decks. Those are like S tier. And it makes sense that Pika was on top in terms of playability, just because it does kind of hose the water decks a little bit. There was also a Raichu variant, so if we count that as just broader like Lightning Pikachu archetype, then this type of deck accounts for like almost 28% of the deck distribution. So a huge amount of the meta is this. Very clear, Pikachu EX is super strong. And then Marowak EX being 12% of the meta actually surprised me a little bit. I've played the deck quite a bit, and while I think it's solid, and I mean it's super coin flippy, but it is somewhat solid, I was really surprised that actually this many people played it. And then of course there was like a whole host of other random archetypes that were under 10% of the meta. So let's just jump right into the deck lists, and these are all hosted on Xburst. And Xburst is a site I just found, but it's pretty awesome. There's even a feature where you can kind of build your own decks and export an image of the deck list, which is really handy. I have no affiliation with them, but it's a great site, so check it out. And this right here is the 8th place deck list. It's a pretty stock Mewtwo EX list. Mewtwo EX is super powerful, as you probably know if you've been following the game at all. Plays 2 of those. Also, 2 of each in the Ralts Kirlia Gardevoir line. Obviously, Gardevoir is really instrumental to Mewtwo EX. I don't really think you can play Mewtwo without Gardevoir. Gardevoir is just too busted with its Psy Shadow ability, adding free energy to Mewtwo so that Mewtwo can be casting its really big, strong Psy Drive ability every turn. So we already knew this was at the top of the meta. I'd say the only variance in this list is like one Meowth. I don't really think the stock list plays a Meowth, but otherwise, pretty standard list. In 7th place, we have definitely one of the spiciest lists in the top 8. There's one that's maybe even spicier, closer to the top 4, but you'll have to wait and see that one. But this list I just found super interesting because I've actually been playing a fair amount of Marowak EX. Super coin flippy. Sometimes it's awesome and does 160 and just knocks out your opponent's EX. Sometimes it flips 2 tails and does absolutely nothing. But this list is really interesting to me because it plays ordinary Marowak. 100 HP, 1 energy for 40 damage. 1 energy for 40 damage isn't extraordinary. It's pretty on par with something even like a Farfetch'd or something. Obviously has more HP though. But what's interesting about it is that it only gives the opponent 1 point when it gets knocked out. Whereas Marowak EX is a much bigger commitment because it gives the opponent 2 points. All EXs give the opponent 2 points when they get knocked out. So it's pretty nice to have this flexibility in this deck of, you know, depending on the situation, maybe you want to play one or the other. Also, the deck plays Kabutops, which is super interesting. I think Kabutops is a super interesting, potentially powerful card that I haven't seen a ton of in PvP games. I've only played against this a small handful of times. Overall, I think we're going to see more of it here as people realize how decent it actually is. Another really cool bit of deck building in this deck that you may not have noticed is just that Kabuto actually isn't a basic type. It evolves from Fossil, which is an item. So first you have to put out the Fossil, and then it evolves into Kabuto and then Kabutops. So actually, this deck only has one basic Pokemon, and it's Cubone. So your Pokeballs always get your Cubone. And so that just adds this extra bit of consistency to this deck, and I assume really makes it efficient and good and smooth with your draws. This deck was probably also a really smart metagame play, just considering that fighting is strong against lightning, And as we saw, Lightning was the vast majority of the meta. It had the biggest share, and so this would have been a really strong metagame pick. Overall, I love this deck, and I'd really like to try it out. I've been playing a ton of Marowak EX, like I mentioned, but I've been mostly playing it with Doug Trio. I like Doug Trio, but this list looks probably even better. 6th place deck is a pretty interesting water deck. You've got Starmie EX, Articuno EX. Those are like the crux of water right now. Those are definitely the two best water EXs. Blastoise EX is like pretty good too, but it's seeing a whole lot less play than these two guys. Then it's got the Greninja line, but it's only playing one Greninja. And in my personal opinion, that's not ideal because Water Shuriken, it's an ability and it can even be used from the bench. So if Greninja is on the bench, he can be using his Water Shuriken ability to snipe even your opponent's bench. So from your bench, you can snipe the opponent's bench with Greninja. And if you have two Greninjas, it's rare, but it happens, they can both use this ability every single turn. And I just think that possibility is like so strong that I don't see why you wouldn't play two of these. And instead of playing two of these, this player is playing a Lapras. And please, someone tell me what I'm missing, because in my opinion, Lapras is terrible. 100 HP, that's fine for a basic, pretty solid. But Hydro Pump, okay, 1 energy, great. But for 1 energy, it does 20 damage. Or if it has at least 3 extra water energy, so if it has 4 energy on it, it does 70 more damage. So it does 90. 90 for 4 energy is a horrible rate. That's very bad. The only way I see this being good is if you like high roll your coin flips with Misty, but that's like kind of hard to do. So honestly, I don't see it with Lapras. I think this card's terrible. But again, no criticism to this player in particular because I have no right when they top 8'd and I didn't. So someone let me know what I'm missing with this deck. I just can't imagine that this is optimal, but they did pretty well, so kudos to them. So in 5th place, we have our first Lightning deck, and it is a Pikachu EX deck with 2 Golden Pikachus, very cool. And then we've got 2 Zapdos EX, another very strong card that pretty much goes in all the Lightning builds. Electabuzz, I think it's okay. I don't think it's great. 70 HP, 2 energy, 40 plus, flip a coin. If heads, it does 80. If tails, it does 20 to itself. So if you get a tails, card's absolutely terrible. Honestly, I don't love coin flip cards. They're pretty, how do you say, coin flippy? Yeah. Anyway, this list is also playing Blitzel Zebstrika, which I quite like. I think Zebstrika is underrated right now. Being able to, again, kind of snipe your opponent's bench is pretty strong. And it's for only 1 energy, which is fantastic. 90 HP, nothing to scoff at. Zebstrika is solid. Overall, I just don't love Electabuzz, and I think Voltorb and Electrode are so good that you kind of like have to play them with Pikachu. But again, no hate to this player. I can't really critique them too much because they got 5th place out of 64, so they're definitely doing something right. 4th place was another Pikachu EX deck. This one is fairly similar. The only real difference here is it is playing Pincurchin instead of the Blitzel Zebstrika line. And Pincurchin can paralyze the opponent's active. This does cost 2 energy though, and it only does 30 damage. Part of me just wishes it only cost 1 energy or did a little more damage. I'm not sure that Pincurchin is really that great. This list is also kind of strange to me because there aren't actually that many Pokemon. I could almost see a situation where you get stuck without 3 Pokemon on the bench, and then Pikachu just can't do max damage. But maybe I'm tripping, and maybe this is plenty of Pokemon. The other thing I notice is that these are all basics, and so sometimes I would imagine that maybe you don't even get Pikachu as soon as you want him. But again, far be it for this idiot to critique the deck lists when I didn't even play in the tourney. Congrats to this player for the 4th place. So here is the 3rd place list, and dang, is it spicy. It is playing the full Bellsprout, Weepinbell, Victory Bell line, 2 of each. And Victory Bell is super interesting. I don't think it's ever even been played against me. And it's one of the few cards I don't even own yet, so I haven't played it either. But 140 HP, which is pretty solid. Vine Whip for 2 energy does 60. And then its ability says if it's in the active spot, once during your turn, you may switch in one of your opponent's benched basics to the active spot. So it's almost kind of like an inverse Sabrina a little bit, but it's a really neat way to just like suck in some weak basics into the active spot to knock them out more easily instead of them just hiding in the back on the bench. So this seems like a really sneaky way to kind of like ninjutsu your way into some points. And the Victory Bell line is accompanied by execute, one executor, and one executor EX, which is really interesting. I'm not sure why they're not just playing 2 EX. Executor, the normal, non-EX, is 130 HP. For just 1 energy stomp, 30 plus, flip a coin. If heads, it does 30 more, so it does 60. Whereas the EX has an extra 30 HP, so 160. And again, only 1 energy. That's what's really awesome about Executor is like, dude, you're just gonna have so much extra energy because their abilities are so cheap. Flip a coin, if heads, it does 80. So these are very similar. I almost wonder if this player didn't have 2 EXs for some reason, or I should probably give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they've tested enough to know that 1 and 1 is optimal. But super, super interesting deck list. I would have loved to kind of see like some of these games in action, and I'm gonna have to just like craft some Victory Bells so I can play this deck myself because it looks super fun and interesting. Second place was our third Pikachu EX deck. And funny enough, this one I think is actually built optimally. The other ones that placed a little lower than this deck, I don't like the build as much. And it really surprises me that neither of them were playing Voltorb Electrode, which I think should be mandatory in a Pikachu EX deck. Electrode is just so incredibly good. 80 HP, just 2 energy for a 70 damage Electro Ball. Retreat cost, 0. So this card is just crazy powerful, and there's like no reason you shouldn't be playing it with Pika. And then, of course, Zapdos EX, we already know, is very strong. Thundering Hurricane can just kind of blow out the opponent. And for just 3 energy, it sounds like a lot, but it's honestly not that much because similar abilities often cost 4. It's just a really good card. So this list I think is excellent because it's just so lean, and you just have all the best cards and that's it. And then you get plenty of space for trainers and items. And so this deck can just be really like mean and efficient with like X speeds, like swapping stuff out, and it's just more strategical. And I think it's just like a better, cleaner, more solid list overall. I think that's probably why it got second place. And in first place was the Menace Mewtwo EX. Again, very clean, neat, efficient list here. It's just 2 Mewtwo EX and the Gardevoir line. And honestly, that's all this deck needs to really tick. I think the rest of the slots in the deck probably really should just be items and trainers. You got a couple potions, couple X speeds, 1 red card, 2 Giovannis, 1 Sabrina. Beautiful list, just super powerful. If you're on your game and you're playing well, it's hard to beat. So that's my breakdown of the top 8 deck lists. Congrats to all 8 of those people, and really to all the 64 people who played. I really hope I can jump into a tournament soon, but for now, I'm going to keep practicing. Drop a comment and let me know what you guys think about these lists. If you enjoyed the video, I would love a like and a sub. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.